Let's look at communicating effectively to your audience. Audience recognition. You're never going to speak or write in a vacuum. When you create a document, lead a requirement session, give a presentation, communicate with subject matter experts, you need to consider the following questions. Who is your audience? What do they know? What do they not know? And what do you need to say or write for your audience to understand your point? How do you communicate to a multi-level audience? What is each person's position in relation to your job title? Are you speaking to peers, your manager, the executive team? What's the audience's attitude toward the topic? Do you have SMEs that aren't interested in the project? Do you have SMEs that already understand the vision and they're actually dying to jump in, right? They're excited about being on the project. What diversity issues do you need to consider? Cultural, gender, location? Are you in person on the phone? Are you in different countries? Are there different time zones involved? Make sure your message does not include jargon or acronyms that some of the audience may not understand. You have to remember that you're speaking to the whole room, not just to a specific person. To communicate successfully, you have to be able to recognize your audience's level of understanding. You also need to consider your audience's unique personality and traits, which could impact how successful your communications are. What does your audience know of the subject matter? This is something else that we need to look at, right? So first we've thought about our audience and what their personalities, their level of knowledge. We have to take into consideration what it is that they know about the subject, right? So some people could be very knowledgeable and some may be new to that subject area. So think about what they know. In a requirement session, do you have SMEs that know different areas of the business instead of one SME that knows the entire business process from end to end? Does the audience work closely with the subject at hand? They would be an expert, right, on the subject. Or does the audience have general knowledge of the subject matter, but they really have a different area of expertise? Are they totally uninvolved with the subject matter? You're probably going to have a mix of all three of those types when you're in a requirement session, but you need to know which person is which, right? So that you're asking the right questions of the right people. SMEs will understand the jargon related to the business subject being discussed, probably even better than you understand it. The SMEs will be able to explain the details for standard procedures, business processes, etc. The part of your audience that is not a SME are probably somewhat familiar with the subject, but their job responsibilities might just be peripheral to the subject matter. They might work in IT or another department or may even work outside of your company, right? They could be a vendor that's involved in the project. Because this part of your audience is familiar with the subject matter, they understand some of the jargon, but definitely not all of it. So you still need to avoid acronyms and other jargon as much as possible so that you don't lose them in the conversation. You may also need to provide more background information to this part of your audience so that they have a better understanding of the subject matter. So again, if they're not SMEs that are really involved in the process, then you may need to give additional information when you're talking so that they have a clear understanding. You may also have audience members that don't have any knowledge of the subject matter. There could be a developer in the meeting that hasn't worked on this application before. You could have a project manager assign the project that's new to the company. There could be lots of different reasons that you end up with somebody on your project that doesn't know anything about it. These audience members will be unfamiliar with the subject matter and they're going to be completely lost if you just jump in and get started on requirements. So you've got to remember to give some background, right? Doing that is just as important, and you need to remember to speak in clear, simple terms. You need to explain the topic clearly through precise word usage, depth of detail, and maybe even use some simple graphics. For existing applications, a PowerPoint presentation with some screenshots of the app and an overview of how it works is a great place to start if you know you've got people in the room that maybe aren't as familiar with the subject as some of the rest of the people are. Consider audience personality traits. By doing that, you can speak using the appropriate tone, visual aids, and writing style for your documentation. By recognizing the audience's personality traits, you can more effectively get the desired response that you're looking for from the audience. Obviously, you can't always know the personality traits of everyone in your audience. Most of the time, you'll be speaking to at least some of the people that you know. They will have been on a previous project with you before. You will have worked with them in some capacity. Unless you're new to the company, you're most likely going to have some people that you've worked with previously and you're able to consider and know a little bit about their personality. To foster effective communication, you want to factor in your knowledge of their personalities, their attitudes, and their preferences. Are they slow to act? Are they eager? Are they questioning? Are they organized? Are they disorganized? Are they oppositional, which is really just kind of a nice way of saying, are they argumentative? Are they negative or positive, right? Are they the glass is half full or the glass is half empty kind of person? Are they non-committal? Do they prefer you to be short and to the point? If you have somebody in the room that you know prefers you to be short and to the point, then when you're directing a question at them, don't give them a bunch of background. Just ask them the question and let them ask you if they need more information. What are you expecting from your audience? Are you expecting them to give you business requirements? Do you want them to consider an idea and make suggestions? Do you want them to reject some options? In other words, make a choice between several suggestions that you make. Are you just expecting them to listen or read and file the information for future use? Knowing what it is that you're expecting from them is going to help you figure out how you need to communicate with them, along with, of course, those personality traits. Biased language. Let's look at some issues of diversity. Your audience is never composed of people that are just like you, and I want to be clear here that diversity includes gender, race, religion, age, sexual orientation, class, physical and mental characteristics, language, family issues, and department diversity. Your co-workers will have many different interests, levels of knowledge, backgrounds, and life experiences. A diverse workforce keeps companies competitive. Talent doesn't come in one color, nationality, or belief system. If you have everybody there that is exactly the same, then you're going to get exactly the same every time, right? You need people that have different opinions and different viewpoints in order to foster communication, ideas, and creativity. The things to keep in mind when you're working on a project with a multicultural team that spans different countries are things like verbal and nonverbal communication norms for those countries and cultures, management styles, decision-making procedures, sense of time and place, local values, beliefs, and attitudes. You need to ensure that your writing, your speaking, and your nonverbal communications accommodate language barriers and cultural customs. So don't just assume that everybody's like you. In fact, you should assume that everybody is not like you. I want to give you an example of time when diversity may have caused an issue because people didn't really think about the difference in language. So this is a classic example of a company's failure to recognize the importance of translation concerns. There was a car named Nova, which in English is defined as a star that spectacularly flares up. But in Spanish, that name translated to Nova, which translated to no-go, which is a really poor advertisement for an automobile, right? You don't want to say you have an automobile that doesn't go. So that's just a comical example of when you don't take into consideration the differences between cultures.